This week of the Virtual Skeptics. Bob punches the air. He's got stoned. Barb is in search of something. And Tim Googles himself. I'm your host, Brian Gregory. And I'm really, really, really excited. I'm telling you, because this is something to be really excited about. There we go. Hey. Welcome to our 200, 100, something like that episode. We've actually done 200 of these things. Oh my God.
It's hard to believe, really. Oh my gosh.
So let me do the formalities and introduce the other people who've been doing this 200 times so far. This is Bob Blaskowitz. He's highest conspiracy guy web column.
Honestly, if they don't know this by now, they're never going
to. There could be some first-time watchers now, especially
probably
promoting Tim's fan dance. Okay.
It's true.
Eve Siebert, editor, blogger, and Skeptical Humanities, and contributor to Skepticality and Insight at skeptic.com. This is Barbara Drescher, former psychology instructor, blogger at ICBS Everywhere, and contributor to skeptical projects such as Insight at skeptic.com and The Odds Must Be Crazy. And finally, the ghost man himself, Tim Farley, blogger at SkepTools and Insight at skeptic.com, skepticality contributor, creator of What's the Harm, and former JR fellow. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Brian.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, how you doing? Guys, there's 7 people watching us. That's like, is that a record? I don't know.
Probably.
That might be.
Yes.
It took 200 tries,
200
but we're
tries,
finally,
Yeah.
yep, we're finally there.
Broke that 5 mark.
We made it.
Awesome. Well, if you're watching, thank you. And if you want to get, if you want to harass us during the show, you can do that. There's several ways. You can tweet with hashtag Virtual Skeptics. You can, and you can, hey, look, there's some people on the live chat. There's a live chat on the YouTube stream. There's Pierre Cloutier and Bradley. How you doing? Yes, this is better. No, I'm not going to say that on the air. Hi. Please get involved. Please pay attention. And we're going to quiz you later. We don't have a trivia question because apparently we don't do that anymore because I don't know. We didn't feel like it. I think it was my decision, really. I was like, I don't need that.
You think it was a decision?
No? I guess not.
We just drifted from the trivia question.
But you can, if you want, if you're watching, you can make up your own trivia question and answer it on one of those ways. And we'll give you credit for the answer because we don't know what the question is.
Yep.
Go. Also, if you can figure out what the video is behind me and tweet that or, whatever, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, whatever.
Nice psychic messages, and I will give you credit for that as well. Actually, you might get $1 million for that if you can actually do it. Moving right along. Who's first? Oh, Tim's going first. Tim, the wonderful Tim. Welcome back to the show, Tim.
Yes, I'm here. Amazingly. I recently have had a thing going on Wednesday nights that was conflicting with the show every single Wednesday, so that's why I haven't been around. But that was all leading up to the Peachtree Road Race, which was yesterday. So now I don't have anything.
How'd you do?
I did good. I didn't melt. It was super hot and super humid.
Any day you don't melt is a good day.
Any day you don't melt is a good day.
Yep. Yeah. And I tried to do a little bit faster than last year, and I did. So
cool.
Where's the applause, Brian?
Oh,
yeah. Everyone stand
Sleep
by.
on the job.
Stand by.
There you go. Woo,
And there was much rejoicing.
Okay, so what I want to talk about tonight is technology, SkepTools sort of thing. If you follow SkepTools, you know I haven't posted on there very much because I've just kind of gotten a little bit down on the idea of building technical solutions for skeptical things just because a lot of them don't work. The technology changes, et cetera, et cetera. But one's come along that has some support of some industry leaders that is kind of interesting and might be worth looking into, particularly for skeptical bloggers or anybody that runs a skeptical site. And it aims to solve, and as you know, skepticism about online information has become a big thing in the general public now because of quote-unquote fake news sites and just an increase in the amount of misinformation in our digital environment.
And disinformation.
And disinformation and propaganda and that sort of thing. So Google and Facebook and these other web giants have gotten very interested in this problem. And I want to point out something, and a lot of that you can't really, we're consumers of it. So like if Facebook says they're going to stop fake news, well, what are you going to do? They've added that little red report button, and that's great. But one of the things that we've always wanted is a way to call attention to skeptical material when people go to access the bad material, right? And a long time ago, when I was first starting out, dog's climbing around under my table.
Just wants to be involved.
I talked about SEO, trying to get your site to appear in Google so that if somebody Googled homeopathy, they might find a homeopath site, but they might find your debunk of homeopathy too. And that works to a degree, but there's some keywords like homeopathy and chiropractic that are just so overloaded by people who are making money on those things that it's really hard to compete. And what we needed was a way, if somebody was looking for some more specific thing, if there was a debunk of it, that somebody would put them together. And people have tried to build tools along those lines, and that's what Rebutter was about. But the problem with those sorts of tools is unless they get really wide adoption, the only people who are going to be using them are the people who already know how to find the debunks anyway, right? So skeptics load Rebutter, and maybe that helps them find some Snopes articles that they can then send to other people, but it doesn't really help the underlying problem that a lot of people are still reading this information. So if you use Google News, you may have noticed that they sort of redesigned the website recently and kind of made it a little bit more modern, I guess. Styles change and these things. If you put my first slide up, I'll show you one of the things that's come along with this is a little sidebar box over to the right side, and I have a arrow there pointing to it. And you'll notice that the sidebar box is titled Fact Check. And it has fact checks of currently trending news. And I took this screenshot just half an hour ago, and these are news stories that are trending right now. Like there's a Kid Rock died in a meth lab explosion at his house, death hoax going around, and there's the debunk of it. So hopefully if you're looking at Google News and maybe you've heard something about that and you're about to type that into the search box, you might notice these fact checks there. So that's one way they're surfacing this stuff. And I'm going to tell you in a minute how they find these things, because that's the interesting part. Is they've you know, a lot of the stuff that, like for instance, Facebook is doing, and to a certain extent what Google does, is hidden in their algorithms and whatnot, and it's kind of mysterious, and you don't really quite know what they're doing, and so therefore you don't know how effective they're being. But Google's being very upfront about fact check. Now, if you go to the next slide, this can, even if you don't use Google News, this can show up. So the top story in that box was about the Congressional Budget Office, or CBO, allegedly miscounting people in some estimates of the healthcare proposals. And there's some fact checks around this. And if you actually Google right now CBO counted, you'll notice that the PolitiFact article about this comes up first, and it comes up not only in the little what they call highlight box or whatever at the top. That boxed result is a special result that Google does with that. Basically says, hey, we think this is the most important result here. But also you'll notice the arrow is pointing to a little line underneath the article that says fact check by PolitiFact. Now, in fact, the result there is the PolitiFact site, but the intent is that you might get a result where you see the misinformation and then you see the fact check by PolitiFact or factcheck.org or Snopes or whoever right underneath the article. So that it basically does rebutter for you right there in the Google results. So you can go ahead and go read the fake news or the incorrect information or whatever it is, and then also read the PolitiFact fact check. Now,
so the little green dot with half true next to it.
The green, I should have turned off. That green dot is not a standard thing. That's a Web of Trust thing.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And those green circles are only there because I happen to have Web of Trust loaded in this browser. So.
And they will betray you.
But half true.
Well, that's a whole different thing. The half true part is part of Google's result. That they plucked out what PolitiFact said was the result on this. So you can get a kind of a gist of what the fact check is, whether or not it's or pants on fire or whatever that particular fact check site uses for their rating system. Now, the way this works, Google is not using mysterious, well, to a certain extent, they're using some slightly mysterious stuff, but it's all built on top of something called claim review. And what that is essentially there are ways to mark up your pages web pages are essentially text. And there's the part you can read, but there's also these little tags, these little HTML tags that make things bold and make things headlines and stuff like that. And there's also a lot of tags these days that are entirely intended for computers to read. So you can have tags that say, this is a person's name, or this is a date. And so that people, programs like Google Search that want to scrape things out of your web page can get a little bit of help figuring out what the content is. They're not just looking at a big wall of text. They can say, oh, this page is an event that occurs on April 26th at this location. And then Google can do something with that. So if somebody's looking for an event, they can present that to them as opposed to an article about something. And now there's a bit of that hidden tag nonsense that's called a claim review. And essentially, it's a set of magical little programming tags that you put in your web page that says, hey, Mr. Google or whoever is interested in this stuff, this web page, in addition to being a bunch of text that people can read, is also a review of a claim made somewhere else. And it isn't quite so concrete as rebutter, where you say this page is a rebuttal of this specific other URL. You actually say this page is a rebuttal of this claim, and you give a claim in text, hopefully something close to what somebody would Google or what the claim is. You can think of some standard things like President Obama was born in Kenya. That would be a claim. And if you debunked where that nonsense came from, you would put that in your claim review and attach that to your article. And then hopefully if someone said Obama is from Kenya and actually found an article that said that, your fact check would show up underneath. Now there's more to it than that, because obviously any system like this where people are supplying these things has the potential to be gamed. So Google is doing some editing of which sites they're going to be willing to accept fact checks from. So obviously it would help if you're an established blogger on an established blogging platform like, say, Science Blogs or Scientific American or Pathos or wherever. There's a number of these blog platforms where there are a lot of skeptic bloggers on them. It seems more likely that those would be the platforms where it would work. So if you are a blogger on one of those platforms, you should be talking to your community manager about how do we get support for this. Now, essentially, it is just text that you put in your web page. So in theory, on most blogging platforms that don't handhold you too much, you should be able to insert this into your web page manually. But there is a bit of complexity to it. If you go to my next slide, I have a screenshot of an actual sample from schema.org, and it's a little involved. You have to, mark it up a certain way, and you have to have the date published and what the URL is of your page, and you have to identify who's making this review so that it's not just, hey, this page is claiming. You have to say, my organization, which is blah, is making this review of this claim, and then here's the claim.
Where do you put this? You put this in the metadata of the page?
You put it in the body of the page. So these are invisible tags, and they're actually using fairly standard HTML tags here. So that's a delimited list and a DT, DD, DT, DD. These are standard tags. So if you don't do anything else, this would actually show up as visible text in the thing, which you could then use your style sheet to make it appear a certain way. Or you could actually use the style sheet to make all this invisible. So you just want the search engine to find it. You don't necessarily want people to read it because you'll have a more attractive version in the text. However you want to do it, that depends on your website. But it's designed to be fairly decent looking if you did do the default and let it be visible. Like it uses block quote for the claim, and it uses a header level 4 for the item reviewed down at the bottom and stuff. So, it would look okay if you let it just be visible on your page. So this is something that skeptical bloggers should be looking into, particularly if you do just straight up debunk style posts and not like more meta or philosophical posts. Just like, this is about, so this naturopath said this, here's why that is wrong, and here's the scientific evidence that says it's wrong, and blah, blah, blah. And hopefully if Google likes your platform or your URL or wherever it is that you're posting enough, you can get into the Google results this way and start pushing skeptic content out to Google. And I presume that if, this is very new, and it's, they started with the fact-checking organizations, and they started slow, and they've started to gradually open it up, but they're documenting it on their developer website as if anybody can do this. And I'll give the documentation link in the show notes, but if you just Google claim review and Google, you'll find the documentation. And so we should be trying this out. And I think
I really think that the more motivated people would be disinformation spreaders. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's going to be interesting to see how this pans out, because it's entirely possible that this disinformation spreaders, if they create if they get super, like, you can imagine with for instance, the bots that are going on Twitter, somebody doing an equivalent to that for this, where they register hundreds of websites and start creating claim reviews by the thousands, and trying to get Google to debunk, things that are obviously true or whatever. So it'll be interesting to see, but it's good to see that people like Google that are in a position where they can be the gatekeeper for a lot of people's information, are at least taking this seriously and trying some things out.
Somebody's got it.
And so hopefully we'll give it a try, and we'll see if it works.
Yeah.
But it's worth a shot, and I encourage anybody who's a skeptical blogger who writes debunks of any kind to, again, talk to the platform that you're on and see if they're going to provide tools for this. I've already seen on GitHub a WordPress plugin that someone's working on, so that it would give you a little menu in your WordPress blog.
I was going to ask if there are any tools available to do this for you.
Right. That's obviously the best way to do this, is not to hand code these tags, because you could get that wrong. And if you got one of those tags wrong, then the Google bot is just going to skip over what you posted and not use it. So you want tools that can put it into the site, into your web page, and make sure it's correct. So, but those are still emerging because Google just defined this a few weeks ago, and so the tool vendors are catching up.
It seems like now that everyone seems to be waking up to this because of the need for mainstream media to get fact checked and claims of the government to be fact checked, and now everyone's paying attention to it.
There are claims of the government that are questionable?
Yeah, that just the news broke, but it was fake.
Oh,
so,
okay.
I don't know.
Moving right along.
Honestly, I'm all for. I think the only way that this can work is if Google lays down the law and says, like, you pass muster and you're a real newspaper, and
Yeah. The problem Google has always had is they really hate mucking around manually with stuff, because they, as soon as you start doing it, you open the possibility that people are going to argue with you about how you're doing it. Mm-hmm. And so they would much rather just have an algorithm set up that sets a set of rules, and then everybody's playing in the same rules, and hopefully if the rules are set a good way. The one example I always would show people is there was a really offensive anti-Semitic result that would show up in Google for the #1 result in Google if you Googled the word Jew. And Google refused for years, even though they were asked by major Jewish, anti-discrimination organizations to remove that result. They refused to remove the result. But what they did do is they had essentially the equivalent of a very highly paid Google ad that they bought themselves, that was at the top of the results, that would always show up when you got that result, and it would basically say, why is this offensive result here? And it would take you to a Google written web page that would explain why that result was there and why they hadn't removed it, and essentially told you to ignore it. So that was always my example of how Google doesn't like mucking with things. They like to just use the tools that they give to everybody to try to solve the problems. Yeah. So this is a tool they're creating, but I mean,
they need to start serving as editors at some point if they're going to serve up so much content, especially when it comes to the news.
The problem is that
or curators.
Once they're an editor or curator, there are certain legal protections. Right, exactly. There are legal protections that they have as a hosting service that go away, and suddenly they can be sued.
Yeah. And also, people will automatically distrust them or mistrust them.
Right.
Because who are you going to trust? Big search engine or Breitbart?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Well, thanks, Tim, and happy 200.
Whee!
Barbara's next, and Barbara says it sounds like she's got an interesting story to tell, well, at least one that was told by someone interesting.
Well, it's a pretty short story, but I think I found it interesting, so I thought I would share it. I like Rob Lowe. You guys like Rob Lowe? I grew up with, well, I didn't grow up with Rob Lowe's movies. I was an adult when most of them came out, but
St. Elmo's Fire was my favorite.
I love that movie. But he's my generation, so the Brat Pack is my generation, and he's a good writer. I really enjoyed his first book, but
he's much better when he plays conservative Christians, though.
Yeah, I don't know. I like him in everything.
I like the irony of him doing that.
Yeah. I do. He's doing a new show, and I'm glad to see him back on TV. It's just what he's doing that I'm not so thrilled about. He's doing a new show with his adult sons. It's called The Lowe Files. If you would bring up the first slide.
Wow, those are some Hollywood chins.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
They look just like their mother. They do. They look very serious, don't they? So the Low Files. He did an Entertainment Weekly piece, and that was it was an interview. So I thought it would be interesting to talk about it from his point of view and to tell you what he said about it. They basically said they described the show as him traversing the country with his sons Matthew and John Owen as they probe into a slew of mysterious phenomena, from the exploration of an underwater alien base off the coast of Malibu to working with an esteemed shaman at Preston Castle, a reportedly haunted reformatory for boys, with curiosity, science, and a well-reared sense of humor. And
Except for the science part. Sorry.
And the appropriate amount of skepticism as well. Well,
So it's entirely skeptical.
I have my doubts about the appropriate.
It could be interesting.
Amount of skepticism. Could be very interesting. I just have my doubts about their description of it. I'm probably going to watch the show, but I don't expect the appropriate amount of skepticism, and I'll tell you why. Of course, I'm going to tell you why the long way. But Lowe says this about the show. He says, if you put Anthony Bourdain in a blender with Scooby-Doo, you get the tone of the show. Here's the problem.
Ew. Sorry.
At the end of every Scooby-Doo, you get this. Bring up the next slide, please.
Poor Scooby.
The blender thing. I'm stuck on the blender thing.
It's always a guy in a mask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what the end of Scooby-Doo always has. And somehow I think that's not going to happen here.
I like the kiss mask.
Yeah.
It's my favorite.
Lowe says, I grew up watching Leonard Nimoy's In Search Of. I loved it. People always ask me what my guilty pleasure is on television. By the way, I grew up with In Search Of too. I loved it. I loved Bigfoot. I loved aliens. I loved ESP. I had my own Zener cards. I made up my own Zener cards and did experiments when I was a kid. I was totally into this stuff. A lot of skeptics will say that. This sounds exactly like what Daniel Loxton will say about Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah.
We a lot of us were very into that stuff. And then we grew up. And we learned about science, and we thought about what this was all about. And we, all of those experiments never showed anybody had ESP. So he says, I loved it. People always ask me what my guilty pleasure is on television, and my guilty pleasures are Ancient Aliens and Finding Bigfoot. I don't hate watch them, but I also don't watch them as a total believer. I watch them hoping to believe. Because a world in which Bigfoot exists and aliens exist, to me, is more interesting and fun. That's the spirit of our show. Sure, I would agree with all of that, except...
Did she just turn off there for a second?
I'm trying to figure out how to say this. It's more interesting and fun, but it's also fantasy. And if you want to know what reality is, you've got to let go of the fantasy. So, make movies about Bigfoot and aliens and watch them. Yeah, I do. I watch them. I don't make them, but I watch them. And they're fun. But that's called suspending belief. So when you're making a reality TV show, it's time to think about reality. So this show, I think it's
Since
like a
when?
I know. I know that was kind of stupid. It's a 9-week, 9-episode series where they go every weekend and they explore something new. And this is what really
for Rob Lowe to spend time with his kids.
It's an excuse for Rob Lowe to spend time with his grown kids and get paid for it and have fun. And that's great.
It's like
that's
the White House.
It's all great. It's all
Pretty
great.
much.
Except when they asked him
if
the show made him more of a believer, and he said, absolutely.
Oh, Jesus.
So that...
Bob gave up.
So upset. It just knocked him right off the air.
He's like...
So that's why I don't think the show is going to be very skeptical. I'm probably going to watch it because it'll be fun, and it's Rob Lowe having fun, and,
Like I said, Hollywood chins.
Yeah, I want to like him. I want to like this show. But I have a feeling, and all the little stills that I've seen, and the trailer, if you watch the trailer, it looks like all of the other ghost hunting shows. And you know what they don't do? They
Sign?
don't do. No, yeah, well, I don't know because I haven't seen the show yet because we don't know what the results are. He says there's going to be interesting results, so maybe they will find some ghosts. I don't know, but I know from the trailer what they don't freaking do, and it's the first thing that any paranormal investigator will tell you should do. I wish Ben was here. Ben Radford was here so I could ask him because he would know exactly what to say. What's the first thing you do when you're looking for ghosts or whatever? Turn on the freaking lights.
Yeah.
And the trailer is all them in the dark.
Yeah.
So
'Cause that's
sitting
good
around
TV.
in the dark,
Yeah.
listening to sounds and getting, listening to scary sounds.
And saying, what's that?
Yes, exactly. It must be Bigfoot because we don't know what it is.
Yeah. I have an important question about the slide.
Okay.
Has Fred peed himself?
Yeah, I noticed that. It looked a little,
All right.
little awkward.
Maybe.
I didn't notice that.
Maybe
oh
he
my
thought
god,
it was
that's
a
funny.
real monster.
But he
Or it's
he's
a shadow of something.
still looks quite proud of himself, so that's nice.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay, my rant is over.
Yay! Oh,
Ranting.
that was the long one. 'Cause I
I'm
was
looking
expecting-
forward to it. It airs August 2nd, and I'll be home on my trip by then. So
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we got a happy congrats 200 from Bill Hunsicker on the chat. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
And a few more people have showed up to chat in the chat because that's what chat's for. And Eve is next. Eve is going something about stones.
Yes.
I'm hoping. I'm not even going to guess what kind of stones.
All right. Could get yourself into trouble.
Yes, I could.
Could be just about anything,
I just
Well,
didn't back down.
especially if
fast
Gwyneth Paltrow is involved.
no, not this time.
those-
Oh,
Ah,
dear
not
God.
those
Comfortable
stones.
stones. Ugh.
Okay, just
I
get
think ours
Gwyneth out of everyone's
it's-
mind. If you could bring up the first slide.
That's not a
Yes.
stone.
No, this is Emerita virtual skeptic Sharon Hill. I
Yes.
managed to bring her into the show.
Yay!
200.
Sharon.
Hi.
She can't actually hear you.
She can if she's watching the
Well, no,
show.
she can if she's watching, but yeah. But her picture's probably not going to respond. I just thought you should know that.
Oh, okay.
She is a geologist. And if you asked her the age of a random rock from the Grand Canyon, she could probably tell you that it's really, really old. She might even be a little bit more specific than that.
Depending on
Yeah.
where you found it and
Yeah.
what
yeah.
kind of rock it was. Yeah.
If you bring up the next slide, this is Andrew Snelling. It's actually Andrew A. Snelling, and I believe
Never
it's
been on
Sharon,
this show.
Sharon A.
Interesting.
Hill. Coincidence?
Hmm.
He's a young Earth creationist geologist. So if you showed him the same rock, he could tell you that it's roughly 6,000 years old.
Because that's the age of all rocks, right?
Well,
That's
It can't
that's
be
the
older.
top end. That's
he
the
didn't
top
have to. He didn't have to learn very much in school.
Yeah. He does actually have a PhD in geology from the University of Sydney. And for a time, he published in peer-reviewed journals on uranium mineralization. He used scientific terminology that indicated that the rocks in question were thousands of millions of years old. If you go by the normal definitions of those terms. And for a while, his real scientific work actually kind of overlapped with his creationist work. But for the last several decades, his work has been devoted to sciencey sounding non-science. He is Answers in Genesis's pet geologist.
Of course he is.
Yes. He started with the group that I think Answers in Genesis split off from. In 2013, Snelling applied for permission to, quote, study the folding of Paleozoic sedimentary structures at 4 locations within the Grand Canyon. If you could bring up the next slide.
That's
That's
pretty.
it. Yep.
Big geology hole.
Yep, I believe that's technically how it's described.
Yes.
He also wanted to collect some fist-sized sample rocks.
Of course he did.
That
Yeah.
sounds dirty.
I know.
No,
Well,
Gwyneth
especially
Paltrow.
Gwyneth. Yeah.
Oh.
His purpose was to show that a global flood about 4,300 years ago explains basically rocks. The National Park Service consulted with several academic professionals. Geologist Carl Karlstrom, who sounds like he could almost be a Simpsons character with that name, but
Yeah.
said that Snelling's, quote, description of how to distinguish soft sediment from hard rock structures is not well written, up to date, or well referenced. My overall conclusion is that Dr. Snelling has no scientific track record and no scientific affiliation since 1982. Snelling's request was denied, and he was warned that if he collected samples without permission, he would be banned from research in the national park system. And that would be hard for Snelling, as he sometimes works as an interpreter on river trips in the canyon. So in 2016, he...
Interpreter?
I don't know.
Are they speaking in tongues?
God.
I think it means he leads
Oh, I see.
creationist tours.
I get you.
In 2016, Snelling submitted an amended proposal and was told that he would have to obtain GPS coordinates and photos of each site and submit detailed information about how the samples would be obtained. So I think what happened was he was given a permit to do preliminary work so he could have the information so he could then apply for a permit for the rock extraction. Instead of complying, Snelling sued on May 9th of this year. The complaint alleged that the Park Service allowed more aggressive sampling without the same sort of requirements. Snelling claimed that the Park Service was discriminating against him because of his beliefs, and it was therefore violating Snelling's constitutional rights, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and Trump's May 4th Religious Freedom Executive Order, which was signed 5 days before the filing of the lawsuit. According to Gary McCaleb, senior counsel at conservative Christian organization Alliance Defending Freedom.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Quote, this case perfectly illustrates why President Trump, God, that's still hard to say.
Yes. Yes. It is.
Why that entity had to order executive agencies to affirm religious freedom because park officials specifically targeted Dr. Snelling's religious faith as the reason to stop his research. Unquote. Snelling and the Park Service have now reached an agreement, and Snelling has dropped the suit. Snelling and the Alliance Defending Freedom are crowing. Snelling said, I am gratified that the Grand Canyon research staff have recognized the quality and integrity of my proposed research project.
You forced them.
It's
And
totally made up.
desired research permits so that I can collect rock samples in the park, perform the planned testing of them, and openly report the results for the benefit of all.
Uh-huh.
Now, I'm not as sure as he is that the Grand Canyon staff have recognized the quality and integrity of this work.
How do you get to crow about the integrity of your work before you've done it?
Well, there is that.
Asshat.
In a letter to McCaleb, that was actually before the lawsuit was filed, they outlined their concerns and recommendations. They said all the sites were in highly visible areas, and Snelling's proposed extraction method would permanently, visibly mar the geological structures themselves. Snelling wanted to use a hammer and chisel and just knock off some rock.
And he didn't want to have to travel very far.
Most researchers apparently generally remove rock that's already been broken off.
Right.
He also he also wanted to use the hammer and chisel at unspecified locations or vaguely specified locations. And the letter also points out that at least one and possibly several of the proposed sites lie outside the park. Therefore, they proposed, quote, to assist Dr. Snelling by having experienced staff meet with him in person or by conference call to pinpoint locations and determine appropriate sampling methodology. So now articles about the suit and the settling of the suit seem to suggest that this recommendation was part of the settlement, but the letter's dated May 5th, the day of the executive order, and before the lawsuit was filed. Based on the letter, the Park Service wasn't treating Snelling any differently because of his stupid beliefs. They're not mentioned. They're concerned about him breaking the Grand Canyon, as far as I can tell, or not breaking it, just making it ugly, denting it a bit. And there also seem to be bending over backwards to accommodate him, to let him get his permission without screwing up the Grand Canyon. So at this point, it's not clear to me what the terms of the settlement are. And if Snelling accepted in some way the terms outlined in the letter, one wonders why the crap he sued, except to get publicity as a poor whittle creationist martyr.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I didn't know that as a citizen of the United States that I had a right to rocks in the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Certainly.
So I should go collect.
Yep.
You know, they're mine.
Mm-hmm.
I have a right to them.
Just whack them up.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Hack off a
Whack
bunch
him
of
off
rocks.
with a hammer.
Hack some rocks.
I seem to recall some people getting in huge trouble for doing that in Sedona.
Mhm.
Yeah, I bet. But no, Snelling has been around for a long time at Answers in Genesis. He's the guy who was running their Answers research journal for
Yeah. So he
back in the day.
So he's still doing the peer-reviewed journal. Sorry.
Depends on your definition of peer.
That's
Yeah.
what I was just going to say.
My offer for $100 for anyone who can get a fake article published in there is still valid.
All you got to do is have a guy named Jake Peer who's on staff and who reviews everything, and you've got a peer-reviewed journal. Right?
Oh, hey, maybe that dog that I talked about, Dr. Olivia Dahl, who's on the editorial boards of a whole bunch of journals.
Overqualified.
I could get a cat and named Peer, and then
There you go.
you might not.
Well,
be much
one of the
paper
things that
left
they had
when
at
it's
one
done
point
with it,
in
but-
their requirements, because it was kind of, we made it public that we were looking for someone to submit something fake. One of the requirements was that you had to get a letter from your pastor.
We do for everything from them. And I mean, to get a job from at the creation. That was one of the problems with the stupid ARC Park, that they were getting state money and yet were wanting to discriminate in hiring, which eventually was decided, you know what, go ahead.
Is there any news on that ARC Park recently?
Yeah,
it's
supposed to
crashing.
open last July.
Things aren't going well, but, and this is the important part,
Oh God.
it's the fault of atheists.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
For praying.
Of course it is.
It's all the
Atheists
critics'
are
fault.
praying for it to
It's
fail.
it's the negative energy, right? Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
well,
Atheists
that's
are
right.
praying for it to fail. I love that.
And the
That's
fake
what they said.
and the fake news.
Yeah.
And that's why it's failed to revitalize that little part of Kentucky. So it's
All the money
atheists,
she gave them.
and skeptics' fault. Not only that the ARC Park isn't doing well, but that for any problems of the people of Kentucky who were
Yes.
not helped.
Gee, who knew that people wouldn't want to drive hours on end to go tour a boat that's not actually a boat full of animals that are not actually animals?
Well, no, to be fair, it's an exact replica of Noah's Ark, except, okay, it's not seaworthy.
Right.
And
That's
it
why I
means
mean it's not a
fire
boat. It's sitting
it's
on
made
concrete
with
pillars.
industrial steel.
Yeah.
They weren't allowed to have animals in it because of apparently that's not humane.
You would kill them.
Right. But aside from that, it's an exact replica of Noah's Ark.
We drove in that by that general area last year, and I was so tempted, but it was like, half an hour, 45 minutes out of my way.
Oh.
Just couldn't do it. Couldn't bring myself to do it. Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's not a great museum.
Yeah, we did go to the Creation Museum once.
It's not finished either. The Ark. I mean, they only opened part of it because they ran out of money. And
yeah.
Are the zip lines open?
Well, yeah, I know. Were they?
We've been doing this show too long because we all think of the exact same.
I know.
Yeah.
Go right to the zip lines.
Yep.
They haven't had many lightning strikes on people on the Creation Museum zip lines, and it was a worker, not an actual tourist or anything. But weren't there plans to have zip lines out at the Ark Park too?
I
don't remember.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, historically accurate zip lines.
Yes.
Well, I know.
Actually have to be,
Tarzan vine.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to be,
Well, they'd
I'm not
be
gonna go
very
there.
practical because once you're in that giant boat, you really want to get off fast.
Yeah.
So.
Because of all the animals.
The Ark
Oh my
Escape.
God.
That was Bill on the chat. The Ark Escape.
Exactly.
Nice.
God, that place is a disaster.
Speaking of which, disaster. Bob's next.
Use your next
He's-
words carefully, yes.
All
right,
I don't have the rim shot ready to go.
So it's amazing how much has changed in the last 5 years. When the virtual skeptics first went online, the internet had not yet been invented.
Yeah.
Really?
We had to use steam and cups with wire.
Exactly. And cancer quack Robert O. Young was a free man, peddling his alkaline diet, cancer cure to patients, and accumulating what can only be assumed to be a healthy body count. As we've reported, Young was arrested in 2014 on charges of theft and practicing medicine without a license. He claimed to be a naturopath by training, by which we mean he has no marketable skills in relation to medicine. But that didn't stop him from, first of all, taking on the self-bestowed title of doctor and taking on cancer patients, or for getting convicted on a number of counts late last year. Are a special class of patient, and this is why cancer quacks are a special class of awful. Patients face a scary disease that might well kill them. It's also a disease where the treatment options are perhaps not very pleasant. Chemotherapy, radiotherapy, surgery are the options generally, and they may extend or improve life, but it's not a pleasant choice to make. So you can see why people would want a less painful or daunting remedy, right? And this is where predatory cancer quackery steps in. In this case, Young had his alkaline diet cure, the idea being that bodily acids make you have cancer. This is a titanically foolish statement that might be especially attractive to patients because it's not necessarily obviously untrue to someone who's not tutored in the area. It offers a sciencey rationale. It seems like it's understandable. We kind of know what an acid is. The cure is comprehensible and fairly easy, and it's couched in positivity and hope, which cancer patients need. And it's also murderously wrong because your body tightly regulates the acidity of your your body. If you upset that homeostasis, you either get acidosis or your body becomes too alkaline, and the chemical reactions in your body that have to happen won't. It's called acidosis. And it kills you real fast. Your lungs and kidneys keep you at your body with an acidity of approximately 7.4, and a little bit on either side of that. It's really quite fiddly. And it's designed by, pardon me, a little bit of acid. You know, evolution has tinkered with this enough that it can keep these values very, very specific. Any attempt to alter your pH will be thwarted by your lungs and kidneys. Anything like, you know, taking a bullshit alkaline diet at a Charlton Pukes avocado ranch, $2,500 a night, your body will naturally neutralize it. And what the hell is an avocado ranch? Do you like
that has avocados.
I assume they're big avocados you ride.
Do you like, yeah, you
I don't.
brand the avocados today and
Put a quarter in.
clean out the avocado stalls or something? Like, I don't, it's a farm. Anyway, I'm just going to have an issue
It really
here.
depends on how feisty the avocados are.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so according to the San Diego NBC affiliate, and he was tried, I think, in San Diego, Young previously pled guilty to 2 charges of practicing medicine without a license. As part of entering his guilty plea, Young had to state that he has no post-high school educational degrees from any accredited schools. He also stated he was none of the following: a microbiologist, a medical doctor, a hematologist, a naturopathic doctor, or a trained scientist.
He's not even a naturopath. I mean, how much
He is
do
a
you have to go to
fake
for that?
naturopath. He is
Oh
faker
my
than-
God, that is like.
It's like a double
I
entendre.
know.
I mean, it's like a double.
Negative.
I don't even
Yeah,
know
no,
what that is.
yeah.
It's
He's
So he has a homeopathic level of.
of trading even naturopathy, right?
Wow. So he must be awesome.
Wow.
Wow.
No, he's
Did he
just
shake
been,
himself?
huh?
Did
Yeah.
he shake himself enough?
Yeah, no kidding. You know, well, the thing is, like, he's been at this for decades at this point. I think since '95. I think that was his first arrest, and he keeps doing it. And
of course.
so this,
It's making money.
this, well, he's making rather a lot. You know, $500 per infusion, and then the $2,500 a night at his ranch.
Mhm.
You know, that's real money from people who are really sick and really desperate. And he may believe, he may not believe. But I tell you what, though, the more I look at these cases where doctors or you know, people who are practicing medicine are brought in front of judges, the more convinced I am that these cases really, really are not the place for this type of shit to be settled. The judge in this case, whose name was Richard Whitney, said Thursday that while there was some benefit to Young's work, and like, right there,
What?
exactly,
Oh,
sit down and shut up. It can't possibly work. But anyway, he said he had oversimplified the extremely complex fields of microbiology and hematology. Quote, I think where it all went very wrong is you became overly aggressive and overly confident in your areas you just had no knowledge about. The judge said Young had stolen time from terminally ill people, including some who were built out of tens of thousands of dollars. Quote, I am hopeful this will not repeat itself, which he has already done many times before. So, wake up, you idiot judge. I wonder if they had because in the story, or in the various stories I read, they had interviews with people who said, oh, well, he helped my relative. Every quack has that, right?
Yep.
And it's very compelling, but judges need to keep their shit together and not be swayed by anecdotes. Unfortunately, that's just not how the court system works, because you have people come up and testify on behalf of these quacks. I thought that I honestly thought before I started doing quackery that judges would be perhaps somewhat inured to rhetorical flourishes, be aware of the problems with eyewitness testimony, but holy shit.
Just like you think that doctors always make decisions based on the science.
Right, exactly. You know, I know, and like, what was I thinking, right? So
But
that's
the court system is actually designed to depend to a large extent on eyewitness testimony.
yeah.
Well, eyewitness testimony, I think most skeptics give eyewitness testimony a really bad rap. Eyewitness testimony is not false just because it's eyewitness testimony.
No.
And we have to recognize that it's an extremely important thing in the judicial system, and it is not something that we should be, just dismissing. What we need to recognize are the types of problems there are with eyewitness testimony and how we can be more confident in it. And we have to think about the circumstances. We have to think about the things like, did the person, is a person certain of the time because of, for example, they were watching a TV show and it comes on at a certain time, and are there things that corroborate that person's testimony?
Right. And there are some ways, there are better ways to the way that I saw it described once was to treat the memory as a crime scene and do not introduce leading questions and that sort of thing.
By the time you're in court, though, you have that part of it has gone out the window. You have no control over that. That all happens when people are being interviewed at the scene, when they're afterward. All of the way that you taint memory by leading questions, things like that, happens in the process, in the interview process, and that's something that law enforcement has to be better at. But as far as judges and juries need to understand it, they simply need to understand that eyewitness testimony shouldn't be the only piece of information that you judge something on. Just because somebody said it's true doesn't make it true. But you have to look at evidence as a whole. You have to look at circumstantial evidence, and you have to see how it lines up with eyewitness testimony.
The case where I imagine that eyewitness testimony would be extremely convincing and extremely compelling is if you know the people, if you actually recognize the people.
Yeah.
If it's an unknown assailant or something, then I think it becomes a little bit more dicey. But
that's also a point where you need to be skeptical.
Yes.
Because recognizing, just because you think you recognize somebody doesn't, mean that you have. I mean, your brain is designed to create similar patterns. But that said, we also we can recognize people by their gait very easily if there's somebody we know. Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying that the thing about eyewitness testimony is, just because you mentioned it, is we shouldn't simply dismiss it outright, and we need to understand how to evaluate it. It's just a piece of information.
And as best I can tell, this type of stuff, it's not the right type of evidence that would allow you to say that it's sometimes beneficial. In this case, I don't think it is. Yeah, and
actually what you're talking about is an eyewitness testimony anyway. Right. It's testimonials.
Yeah, I guess so. So.
And anecdote versus.
Right.
Yeah, and it shouldn't trump expert testimony.
Use that word. Don't use that word.
Even expert testimony can be sucky.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. But if having scientists saying this can't possibly work.
I was on a jury last year that the prosecutor just destroyed this expert witness, and utterly destroyed her. And I totally agreed. And she was in my field. I was embarrassed.
Mm. Well, I was thinking like the Dover trial.
Yeah.
Where,
for every expert, there's an equal and opposite expert.
Yeah, but it's what they say.
Experts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actual experts. And they had, but you notice in the Dover trial, and take a look at how the Dover trial went. The expert testifies, and then the other expert comes in and debunks it with real information. But that information is something that you can wrap your brain around. I mean, a lot of that was the expertise there was not just in the science, but also in the way that they explained it, so that so that the judge could understand. Oh, I see now what's wrong with that. And they had the facts on their side as well. I mean, plus one of the key pieces of information in that trial was the replacement of the word creationist.
Oh, that was
designer
design
and
propositionists.
Yeah. And the way they didn't do it
proponents,
and you could see that throughout the whole book. So those are things that corroborate, But anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry. We got way off track here.
A little bit, but so this guy is going to be spending he was sentenced to 3 years and 8 months. The word on the street is that he has a year of prison time under his belt, and that his remaining time will be halved for good behavior, even though he is a vulture who eats the almost dead. He's a horrid man.
But I have to say, you say you don't think the court system is the right place for this, but if you want them behind bars...
No, you're right. You're right. No, the judges need to be better, and juries need to be better.
And you know who needs to be better? Prosecutors need to be better.
Yeah.
Prosecutors need to be better at countering the kinds of evidence that these people bring forth. They need to be better about bringing forth the right expert witnesses and countering the testimonials. They need to be better at educating the judges about the use of testimonials in science and about the fact that these are scientific things that have answers. They're not just, guesses.
Yeah.
And because he didn't have credentials,
somebody should have difference of opinion. Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody should have been explaining to this judge that the fact that this guy doesn't have the right credentials is important. He doesn't know as much as doctors. And here are some doctors that will tell you a little bit about cancer. Yeah. That's my opinion. Yeah. Sorry, I'm ranting.
I've been out ranted for once, so this is
wow.
Well,
it's a 200 miracle. 200 miracle.
You're contagious. Your anger is contagious, Bob.
Yeah, I'm.
It's the beard. I think it's the beard.
Yeah.
It's that beard power.
I'm much grayer than I was when this show started. I don't want to say that because of the show my beard is going gray, but
so we can't call you Redbeard much longer.
No.
Well,
I look like a pigeon shit on my face is what it looks like.
I wasn't going to say anything,
living in your beard.
I thought it was an osprey.
Yeah.
It could be osprey shit.
The good news is that I'm going to hopefully end the show on kind of a positive note, and I'm going to
robots.
Yay, robots! Woohoo, apocalypse!
Yay! So that's going to happen now. Just a little bit of trivia here. Our 100th episode was on the 20th of August, 2014. So since then, we've done 100 episodes, and it's been 3 years.
Wow.
Almost, minus a month. And I have reported on a lot of different robotic things. Let's see here. I've reported on 110 different articles during 100 episodes. And as like a kind of a celebratory of the fact that this is our 200th episode, I'm going to read the headlines of every article that I've covered over the last 100 episodes.
Awesome.
To the tune of yakety sax.
Oh, extra awesome.
Harvard's 1,000-bot swarm of kilobots. University of Southampton's spurting squid. Nixie wearable camera drone. Moonwalk, the cyborg rats. Megabots Kickstarter. OSH bot, hardware bot, store bot. Southbank's Pepper, the emotion reading robot. China's anti-drone laser. Robotic microscallops that can swim through your eyeballs. Robo penguins. Toshiba builds creepy android, still not better than Disney's Hall of Presidents. Microsoft Dalek.
Got nothing on Trump.
SpaceX planning to land autonomous reusable robots on rockets on drone ships, which, by the way, they're doing that now. For some reason, one of these shows was a link to the Malox website. I'm not sure. Lunar Mission 1, crowd-funded robotic moon lander. Personal robot Kickstarter. Atlas has been unplugged. Doom coming soon. Zurich, autonomous systems. Let me get started with this again. There you go. I'm halfway through. Zurich Autonomous Systems Lab robot cuttlefish. Flying walking vampire bat robot. Robot vacuum tries to eat sleeping owner's head. Boston Dynamics Spot. Free online course for AI from UC Berkeley. One of those. Alibaba drone delivery in Beijing. Military test amphibious robot guard balls. That's the actual headline. FAA unveils drone rules. Autonomy is in. Drone delivery is out. Harvard's cyborg flesh. I'd actually talked about that. Google's Titan drones. Robo Salamander. Killer robot with dodgeballs. DARPA Robo Challenge. Liquid metal motor. NASA's Super Ball bot. National Robotics Week. My own work that I do. NASA's CEO. The Robo Games. AI won't kill you anytime soon, but these really smart guys are afraid anyway. Robot gang stealing cars. Apparently, Jaroba is not a snake. I'm about halfway through. Should I keep going?
You really need to have a speeded up video of robots chasing scantily clad females.
Yeah,
that really would help.
True.
Maybe some scantily clad robots.
That was actually number 39 out of 110. So there's a couple of other ones.
Mouth tired because a lot of those were mouthful.
I know.
Do you have any
about penguins?
So remember the episode we did with Alexa was on here?
Yes.
How about the Iron Man suits for sperm?
I don't remember that.
Oh yeah. I remember that.
The giant fighting robots, of course. The AI teacher's assistant that caused the big hubbub. Do you remember that one?
No.
The guy had an AI set up as his teaching assistant, and the students didn't know. And it was just would do all standard responses.
Oh, I love that story.
That was awesome.
That was a Georgia Tech professor.
Yeah, it was. And a whole bunch of other stuff. But anyway, that was the gist. That was fun.
That was great.
That was funny.
I didn't get as far as I thought I would, but I didn't think I'd finish.
A lot of robotic animals.
There are. See, I also like them, so I tend to pick those to cover. So, there you go. That was fun.
Are we
done?
To see a robotic rhinoceros. Can we have a robotic rhinoceros? In fact, that's all we're going to have left.
Well, you could just take a big dog and put a horn on it.
It's true.
But how would you know it's not a unicorn?
The horn's bigger.
Unicorns are fake.
It's gray.
Uh-huh.
And
it doesn't shoot rainbows at its butt. Remember the Robot Hotel with the Robo Raptor bellhop?
Yeah.
That was one of my favorites.
Crazy stuff.
Crazy stuff. Okay, so on that note, let's wrap up our 200th episode with a few things. Now, I'm going to make an executive decision, and I know that a few of you probably have already done the prep work for this, but I am not prepared. So I, being the one with the microphone right now, decided we're not doing book time. Celebratory. It's a special episode. We're just going to skip book time this week because I'm still reading the same book I was reading last week, and I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Last week there was no show, so.
Well, because it's been a busy week. So busy 2 weeks. I'm a slow reader. It's a thick book.
Takes me a couple months to read a book usually.
Do you see what I have? I have an enormous one ready to go.
You just pulled that off the shelf behind you.
There's no shelf anywhere near me. I was keeping it somewhere else.
So we got a couple of announcements.
No.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
Bob and Eve both did talks at Balticon almost a month ago, ish. And JD Mack of the National Cup Area Skeptics videoed them and edited them and put them on YouTube. So we'll put those links in the show notes so you guys can go check out their very interesting talks.
What are they called?
Well, you should know.
I know what they're called.
Do you just want me to read it as a formality? Or
Yeah.
you want to? Okay. Eve did one called Shakespeare Denial, Creationism for the Humanities. And Bob did one, that's like the dramatic voice. Bob did one called What They Don't Want You to Know About Conspiracy Theories. Now, that's the tone that this is written in. So I read it as written.
Well, we delivered them in character, so it's appropriate.
Oh, okay, good.
So you're cosplaying.
Pretty much.
Pretty
I was going
much.
as a git.
Other than that, well, I mean, I went to Nexus over this past weekend.
Did you have
How
fun?
was that?
Which was very cool. Despite the fact that there was a fire in the venue and they had to change
Yeah,
the
that was
location of the
horrible.
entire event at the last minute.
Is that why that?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't hear
Yeah,
about
I
the
was
fire.
wondering about that. I saw the announcements of the change. It was
I
because of
was
a
terrified
fire?
for them.
There was a fire in the
Yeah.
basement, and the fire department came in and dealt with it, and pretty much just made the entire
man.
place unusable. So
Wow.
the first day was in there's a conference room on the top of the Hotel Pennsylvania, 65000, which was kind of cool. Great view of the tall building. The tall building is right over there. It's the Empire State
State.
Building. Right,
Chrysler.
I posted that too. And then the rest of them, we did the cafeteria that was at the Fashion Institute, which is the same, like the campus of Fashion Institute was where the original location was supposed to be. And it actually worked out pretty well. It was a pretty good venue, good stage environment, and a lot of interesting speakers. My favorite panels, there was two things that were my favorite. One was I can't remember her name right now. There was a woman who spoke who went to college to become a naturopath.
It's Brittany Hermes.
Yes,
Yeah.
and
She's
she
really
was
cool.
was a practicing naturopath, and discovered, like, she was smart about it. She discovered that the doc or the naturopath, famous naturopath she was working for, was essentially scamming the patients. And she decided, through good conscience, to leave that profession and go try to get a real degree and start being outspoken about the non-scientific aspect of naturopathy. And fascinating. Got to talk to her a little bit between one of the social events. It was just a wonderfully fascinating person, and brave as hell, because she gets a lot of negative attention for that. There was another one. There was a panel that was on. It was a panel of journalists talking about fake news, and I don't remember all the names of them either. But one of them that was on the panel is the editor from Snopes, and she was very interesting and relevant to what we were talking about earlier. She did say that she is currently working with Facebook somehow. They have some kind of partnership going on. I don't know how that
Yeah, I
feeds
heard
into
about
stuff. Yeah. But it's interesting in that respect. And a lot of them had great things to say. So there you go. If you haven't been to a Nexus, check it out next year. It's really
Tim,
worth going.
did you say that those tags would be scanned by Facebook too?
I'm not sure if Facebook's using them.
Yeah, I don't know.
But since they exist in the page, anybody could use them. Like, for instance, I would encourage anybody who's building something more along the lines of Rebutter, and I hope whoever is, I know Rebutter is still kind of going along. It's sort of changed form a little bit, but whoever's working on it, I would encourage you to look into
Adapting it.
grabbing those tags to autofill some Rebutter, so you don't wait for people to enter things. Go scrape PolitiFact. And get the new fact checks and pre-enter them into Rebutter before people do, so you could, speed the whole process up a little bit.
Well, also Skeptic Guide to the Universe and Skeptic. What is the other podcast?
Skeptic Zone?
No. That's Australian, not New York.
Skepticality?
No, the other New York one. The
Skeptics
one
with a
that
K?
Julia Galef does.
Rationally speaking.
Actually, they just did live recordings, which were very interesting as well. So I'm sure that those are going to show up as podcast form. Some of the other talks, they usually because they videoed everything, they usually edit those and eventually work them out to the internet. So keep an eye out for them.
Yep.
Good stuff. And that's that. Do we have to talk about anything else? Because I canceled the book time and we don't need book time. And anybody want a Jello pop? No, sorry.
No, please don't.
No.
No,
Don't go there. He went there.
he went there.
I really went there. Sorry. Not as bad as
Well-
the joke that we kind of made earlier that no one kind of caught on until it was explicitly put in
Yeah.
chat. But I think that's a pretty good 200 episode. Usually just
People guessed the movie.
oh yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
it happened
Yeah.
so early, and it was so easy this time that I didn't even want to give anybody credit. But let me. So Andrew Hansford on the chat was actually first with Independence Day, and Nathan Miller chimed in like almost exactly at the same time on Twitter. So yes, it's Independence Day, and of course I picked it because yesterday was actually Independence Day, and because we're all recovering now from the alien invasion, we should be able to watch the documentary without too much, emotional involvement.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there we go. Is that it? Is that everything? We have anything else to add? Any snarky comments last time we should thing and stuff?
We're good.
Random words now. Okay. We're going to actually dance this time. I promise.
I dance every time.
What? So it's just me then. Okay.
Tim Dance.
Thanks for watching.
Fans.
Fan dance.
Virtual Skeptics is an independent production of whatstheharm.net, Skeptical Humanities, myself, ICBS Everywhere, and Doubtful News. Our logo was designed by SalemRadio.com, and our theme music is by Music Man.
I'm doing a vigorous march.
See you in another 200.